Hello students, Mrs. Doulton here. Welcome back to Buddy. Today we will read chapter 10, which is short, but let's quickly review chapters 8 and 9. And in chapter 8, we learned that Buddy has a protective nature, okay? And he saved a bird from getting eaten by a squirrel, and he continued to protect that bird. And in chapter 9, we learned that school is out for the summer. Little T is truly wondering why Jamila did not respond to his letter. Little T is worried that his Game Boy money is almost gone. He doesn't know how he's going to take care of Buddy. He doesn't buy a snowball for himself. He thinks maybe he can save that money. But, taking care of a dog is going to require more than saving 25 cents or 75 cents here and there. So I had asked you to come up with a plan, some suggestions for Little T. And I thought your suggestions were pretty good. So let's go into chapter 10 and then review the notes afterwards. And I look forward to speaking to you about the book soon via Zoom. Chapter 10. Saturday morning, Daddy shakes me awake, bright and early. You forgot to do your job. What job? You're supposed to cut the grass. You ain't run the lawnmower in over a week. I can't help it. I make a face. Just for that, Daddy says, you could cut Mrs. Washington's grass too. With her nephew gone, she ain't got nobody to do it. And you ain't got nothing else to do. I look up at Daddy, and he's standing there with his arms crossed over his chest. I pulled the pillow over my face. Why do I have to do Mrs. Washington's too? Why can't somebody else? Just for that, you can do it this week and next, Daddy says. You better quit while you're ahead, boy, and get out of that bed. There ain't nothing for it. I have to do it. When the grass starts growing in the spring, it ain't so bad. Everything's all fresh and green. The air's even a little cool. And you don't have to mow, but maybe once every 2 weeks. But by the time summer comes, the air feels like a wet rag laying across your face, and the mosquitoes are biting all day. You have to do it at least once a week, and even then, there's so much cut off grass laying there, you have to rake it up and spread it under the bushes. Grandpa T keeps saying he's going to get one of those mowers with a bag on the back. But there ain't never enough money for that, so I just keep on raking. You see, Little T has an old lawnmower, and after you cut the grass is not getting collected into a bag. Just like, when you vacuum the house with your mom and she's vacuuming and you're vacuuming, all the dirt and the dust is going inside of a bag, right, in the vacuum cleaner? Well, some lawnmowers have bags that can collect the grass, but Little T's family can't afford that type of lawnmower, so he has to rake up the grass after he cuts it, okay? When I make it out to the shed, Buddy's standing there waiting for me like he knew I was coming. What do you want, Buddy? I say, and he says, woof! I drag the mower out of the shed and gas it up. I yank on the cord, and when it starts up, Buddy yelps and hops back into the shed. You stay right there, I yell. I ain't going to be long. I whip that mower around the yard so fast, baby Terrell ain't even finished with his bottle by the time I'm done. Buddy comes creeping out of the shed when I start raking up the grass. This is a fool thing to do, ain't it, Buddy? He's poking his nose in my pile of grass. Why people can't let their grass just grow, I don't know. I rake that grass up under the bushes, sling the rake over my shoulder, and shove the lawnmower through the gate. Buddy's standing there on his 3 legs, panting in the heat and wondering what he's supposed to do. You stay here, Buddy, I say. I'll be back. He sits right down and he waits. Mrs. Washington lives 2 streets up and around the corner. It ain't that far to walk, but it's far to push the mower. I'm already hot by the time I get there, and I just get hotter walking around and around in the sun. She ain't got a single tree in her yard. Mama says she won't let any grow there because she's afraid they'll fall over in a storm and crush her house. I think old people get crazier every year. When I'm done, I'm about to push through the gate when she opens the door and walks out on the porch. I've got a cold drink inside, she says. You want one? I know Buddy's waiting, but I don't ever turn down a cold drink. I roll the lawnmower around to the backyard so nobody will steal it. And she opens the kitchen door and lets me into the cool. Her house is tiny. Her kitchen is just about big enough for 2 people to stand in. She opens her refrigerator and I step into the hallway. What kind do you want? She says behind the door. Have you got a Coke? I do, she says. Here it is. The door shuts and she stands up and hands me a cold drink. It ain't a Coke. That's the last one, she says. I don't know what to do. I pop open the top and take a sip. It's good, but it ain't a Coke. Sit down, she says, and points to the front room sofa. I sit down. I've got a letter, she says, and pulls a letter out from under the lamp sitting on the table by the sofa. From Iraq, she says. You want to read it? What am I supposed to say? She hands it to me. Open it, she says. Read it out loud. Dear Aunt Mary, it starts out. I look up at her. She's looking at me through her big, thick glasses. All of a sudden it dawns on me, she can't hardly see. She can't see it ain't a Coke. She can't see to read her letter. So Mrs. Washington's eyesight is not good. I put down the cold drink and start to read all the things her nephew has to say. How he misses this and how he misses that. How the other brothers are good and they're a team. How he's worried about her all alone. How he can't wait to get home. How he's got plans to fix up the kitchen. How he's got to go now, but he'll write again soon. I finish it up and look over at her, and she's smiling. He's a good boy, she says, and stands up. She reaches in her purse and hands me a $5 bill. You didn't think you were mowing for free, did you? She laughs. You come back next week. You can read his next letter. When I get home, Buddy's waiting for me at the gate. See? Buddy's waiting for little T. Just like if you have a dog or if you know people who have a dog, they wait for their owners to come home, sometimes by the door or the window. I push the lawnmower toward the shed and he's sniffing at the wheels. I roll the lawnmower into its spot and I sit down by Buddy's blanket. He limps over and lays down with his head in my lap. I run my hand across his head. I brush the bristly ends of his caterpillar eyebrow. I pull on his ears and I scratch up under his neck. He turns his head and looks up at me. Mrs. Washington's nephew is doing all right, I say. He sounds happy enough. Buddy shifts his head a little. Maybe I'll join the army, I say, but I don't want to go to Iraq. I rub behind Buddy's ears. Mrs. Washington's a nice lady, I say. She gave me $5. I look over at Buddy's food bag. All of a sudden, I have an idea. And one more time, I'm making a plan. Okay, let's look at chapter 10 notes. So the setting takes place in Little T's home and in Mrs. Washington's home. And the new character who's introduced is Mrs. Washington. And I probably should have included Mrs. Washington's nephew who's in Iraq. So I probably should have typed Mrs. Washington and her nephew who is stationed in Iraq. Now, there we go. The plot. Little T's job is to cut the grass at his house. Little T must also cut Mrs. Washington's grass. Little T reads a letter to Mrs. Washington. It's from her nephew who serves in the army in Iraq. Mrs. Washington gives Little T $5 for cutting the grass, and Little T makes a new plan. Here's the external conflict. That's between two characters. Little T gives Daddy an attitude about mowing the lawn. When he complains, Daddy makes him mow Mrs. Washington's lawn as well. Here's a nice quote. I look over at Buddy's food bag. All of a sudden, I have an idea. And one more time, I'm making a plan. So what you need to do is tell me, what do you think Little T's plan is? And you're going to use evidence from the text to support your response. You're going to give me information from chapter 10 to explain what you think Little T's new plan is. Okay? Thanks for reading along with me. I will be talking to you all soon via Zoom. Okay? And I really appreciate all the hard work that you've all been putting into Buddy. Bye.